He dropped the champagne bottle when he saw us, me and the husband of the woman he was cheating with, already sitting at the cabin he thought was their secret. It shattered on the hardwood floor, right where they planned to spend their weekend together. That was the moment I stopped being the quiet wife in the background and became the woman who owned the house. Hi, I'm Emily Hartman. For years, I folded towels, paid the mortgage, and kept the peace. And still, they thought I'd sit down and stay silent during the will reading, but I walked away with more than they ever expected. Before we dive into the story, let me learn a bit about you. If you're a charming lady, please leave the number 1 in the comments, and if you're a dashing gentleman, leave the number 2. This way, I can send you a special greeting. Now, let's start the story together. I didn't think much of the chill that morning. It was early October, and Portland always had a way of letting fall slip in overnight. I padded into the kitchen barefoot, the tile cool against my skin. The scent of lemon cleaner still lingered from the night before. I liked things neat, predictable. Nathan's coffee cup sat on the counter untouched, like it had the day before. He'd been leaving earlier lately, or later. I couldn't quite keep track anymore. What I did know was that he no longer kissed my cheek in the morning. Not that I ever asked why. I went upstairs to get ready, toothbrush in hand, hair still a mess. He was in the shower, steam fogging up the bathroom mirror. His phone was charging on the counter. That in itself used to be unremarkable. But for the past few months, he'd been carrying it with him like a passport, always on him, even in the shower. That morning was different. The screen lit up as I stepped in front of the mirror. Just a notification. One line. One moment. Can't wait for the cabin wine and that lace set, counting the hours. I froze. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. The words burned through the screen as if they were etched into the glass. I stood there, toothbrush midair, the taste of mint mixing with something metallic. Maybe fear, maybe anger, but I didn't cry, didn't gasp. My reflection stared back at me, silent, alert. Nathan hummed behind the shower glass, oblivious, his voice still calm, like someone who'd mastered the art of lying by making every day feel exactly the same. When he stepped out, towel around his waist, I was already doing my makeup. My hands moved with the kind of stillness that only comes from practice. He looked at me and smiled. "You working from home today?" I nodded. "You?" "Heading into the office, then flying to Seattle tomorrow for that strategy summit." I didn't ask questions, just nodded again. My voice felt like a paper cut, too small to bleed, but sharp. "That coat in the closet, the navy one, it's warmer," I said. He blinked. "Good idea." We went through the usual motions. He grabbed his keys. I handed him his laptop bag. He kissed my cheek like a man clocking in, then disappeared out the door. The silence after he left was different now, not empty, but heavy. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a coffee I no longer wanted, and stared at the fridge. There it was, tucked beneath a grocery list and a business card, a magnet from Cannon Beach. Nathan brought it back years ago, after a spontaneous trip we took in the early days, back when he still held my hand while waiting in line for breakfast. He'd told me he wanted to buy a place near there one day, a beach house, somewhere quiet. "You'll write?" he said. "I'll pretend to fish." We laughed then. But lately, he'd been working on the coast every other weekend, said the firm was scouting retreat venues. I used to believe him. Now, I wasn't so sure. That evening, I cooked dinner alone. Stir-fry, extra garlic. Nathan hated garlic. I cleaned up slowly, each dish a distraction. The dishwasher hummed like background noise in a life I barely recognized. I sat at the kitchen table and tried to remember the last time he looked at me and really saw me. I couldn't. I remembered instead the small things, how he recently changed his laptop password, how he brought his phone into the bathroom, how he stopped asking me about my deadlines. I thought about that message, about the lace set, the wine, the cabin. I looked back at the magnet. Maybe Cannon Beach wasn't just a dream anymore. Maybe it was real. Maybe she would be there too. I didn't scream. I didn't call him. I didn't tear the magnet off the fridge or throw his mug across the room. I just walked to the living room, pulled out my laptop, and opened it. Not to spy, to prepare. I stared at the message for 10 minutes before hitting send. Then another 15 watching the screen, as if willing it to light up with a reply. "Hi, Tyler. I'm Emily Hartman. I believe your wife and my husband are having an affair. I have proof." My finger hovered above the screen long enough to feel numb. Then, finally, I pressed send. There was no going back. No taking it back. Just silence. Nathan had once told me, during an argument over something now long forgotten, "You overthink everything." Maybe. But I was also the one who remembered the details. And this time, those details were forming a pattern too sharp to ignore. It was almost 6 when my phone rang. Unknown number, Washington area code. "Hello?" There was a pause, a breath, then a low voice. "Is this Emily?" "Yes. This is Tyler, Claire's husband." He didn't say it with anger, more like he was still testing the words, unsure if they were real. "I don't know what this is," he said, "or if it's a mistake, but I wish it were." I cut in gently. "But I have screenshots, texts, a timeline that matches." He was quiet again. "I don't want a scene," I added. "I'm not here to ruin anyone's life, just to stop mine from unraveling in silence." Another pause. Then, "Can we talk? In person?" "Yes, there's a cafe in Ellensburg, halfway between us." "I know the one," he said. The glass fogged a little when I pushed the door open. The air smelled like cinnamon and old wood. Comforting, if anything could be comforting in a meeting like this. Tyler walked in 10 minutes later. Tall, heavier coat than mine, and the kind of tired that doesn't just come from work. He spotted me and nodded without a smile. We sat across from each other, both with coffee cups neither of us touched. "I guess I'll start," I said. I opened my phone, scrolling to the thread I'd saved. The text from Claire. "It's the red wine this time, right?" Same brand from our training weekend. Followed by a photo of someone's bare feet on a wood floor. Tyler exhaled sharply. "That's our cabin. I designed that floor myself." He leaned back, eyes closed, breathing through it like someone trying to avoid being sick. I watched him closely. He didn't flinch, didn't lash out. Just absorbed the blow with a kind of quiet I recognized. The same quiet I'd lived in for months. "Claire said she was in Spokane last weekend," he muttered. I nodded. "Nathan said he had a training in Seattle." "I used to trust her," he said, voice low. "We were trying. She said we just needed space. I gave it to her. Maybe that was the mistake." "Maybe trusting the wrong person doesn't make you weak," I said. "Maybe it just makes you human." We sat like that for a while. Two strangers holding the pieces of something broken and trying to map where it cracked first. Then he said, almost offhandedly, "I still have the spare key to the beach house. She doesn't know I kept it." I looked at him, surprised. "Would you use it?" He didn't answer right away. "I want them to see us," I said. "Not hear from us, see us, no yelling, no drama, just the truth, sitting right in front of them." "I can do that," he said. "We go early," I continued. "We wait." He looked at me carefully. "This isn't about revenge, right?" I shook my head. "Number. It's about closure. For both of us." He glanced at his cup, finally taking a sip. "When?" "Sunday evening, 6 o'clock. I checked Nathan's calendar. It's the time they're supposed to check in." He nodded slowly, processing. "Then we go Sunday morning, beat them there." He leaned forward, elbows on the table. "Are you ready for them to see us?" I held his gaze. "Yes," I said, "but not the way they expect." They smiled when I walked into the law office. Tight, practiced smiles, the kind you reserve for someone you barely tolerate at a dinner party. Nathan's mother, Linda, didn't even stand. She just gave me a once-over from her chair near the window and turned back to her phone. I took the seat farthest from her, close enough to hear, far enough to breathe. The room smelled like stale carpet and pine-scented floor polish. Wood-paneled walls tried to evoke gravitas, but all I saw were shadows of a family eager to divide what didn't belong to them just yet. Linda once told me, over a glass of champagne at our wedding rehearsal dinner, "You're not really part of this family until you earn it." She said it with a laugh, like it was a joke, but it wasn't. And after 7 years of marriage, 2 miscarriages, and 1 father-in-law's slow, painful decline, I'd come to realize she meant it. Nathan wasn't there. Some urgent flight for work had pulled him away. Fitting. He rarely showed up when it actually mattered. The estate attorney, a tall man with thinning hair and a tie that looked older than I was, opened the folder with methodical care. "We'll begin." The tone in the room shifted. Paper rustled. Chairs creaked. Names were called. Nathan and his siblings were left the business accounts, a piece of land in Lake Oswego, a box of watches their father had collected over the years. When the attorney said Nathan's name, Linda nodded proudly as if she had something to do with it. When my name came up, there was a pause. "A small contribution has been set aside for Mrs. Emily Hartman," he said, reading from the page. "A thank you for her support during Mr. Hartman's illness." I heard someone, probably Nathan's sister, murmur, "Of course." I didn't move, just folded my hands and waited. But then the attorney cleared his throat and reached beneath the desk. He pulled out a sealed envelope, thick and cream-colored, my name scrawled in handwriting I knew too well. He looked at me directly. "There's a private addendum. Mr. Hartman requested this be read and delivered to you alone." I walked to the desk. My heels made soft clicks on the worn carpet. The envelope was warm from his hand. I opened it slowly, careful not to tear the edges. Inside was a short letter and a notarized deed. I read the letter once, then again. "To Emily," it began. "I know they never made you feel like family, but I saw what they didn't. You came when no one else did. You bathed me when I couldn't stand. You argued with doctors for my dignity. You were the only one who stayed. I want you to have the house, the one near Cannon Beach. I hope it gives you peace, not pain." There was no flourish, no signature beyond the date and initials I recognized from years of birthday cards. I folded the letter neatly and placed it back inside. I didn't look at Linda when I returned to my seat, didn't meet her eyes when she leaned toward the attorney and asked, "What house?" "The beach house," he replied flatly. "It's now Emily's." Linda's lips parted, but nothing came out. I thought back to those final weeks. His hospital room always smelled of antiseptic and rain. I used to bring him fresh socks and a small fan from home because the vents were never quite right. He liked honey in his tea, not sugar, and only when it wasn't too hot. One afternoon he told me, "They'll circle like birds when I'm gone. But you stayed when it was hard. They don't get to decide who mattered." I never forgot that. Back in the room, I placed the envelope into my bag and stood. "He said you'd understand why," the attorney murmured as I turned to leave. I nodded. "I do," I said softly, "and I'm not finished yet." The key clicked into place with a sound I hadn't heard in years, not since the last time Nathan and I stayed here, before the job took more than just his time, before he started sleeping with his phone on airplane mode, before silence became our native language. The air inside the cabin smelled faintly of cedar and dust, like a place that hadn't been used in the way it was intended. I flipped on the hallway light. Tyler followed behind me, his footsteps cautious, deliberate. We didn't speak much as we unpacked the evidence. 4 glasses, a bottle of red, the printed text messages, screenshots, credit card statements, and one very clear voice note. The cabin had always been quiet, but that night, the silence had shape. It pressed on your chest like altitude. I wiped down the table slowly, watching the dust swirl into the amber glow of the lamps. I remembered this table. 3 years ago, Nathan and I had come here after one of his long weeks. I thought the weekend would help us reset. I lost the pregnancy 2 days later. I never told anyone. Tyler placed the glasses beside the wine, spacing them out like place settings at a rehearsal dinner. His hands didn't tremble, but his eyes were distant. "This is where she sent the picture," he said, pointing toward the hardwood floor in front of the fireplace. "Her toes, the bottle of wine. It's ours. I designed it." I nodded. "She ever mention wanting children?" I asked. "She used to," he replied. "Then she stopped. I assumed it was grief or fear. I didn't realize it was distraction." He turned toward the window. "You?" I took a breath. "I was pregnant once. Here. It didn't last." He looked over at me, not with pity, just understanding. That kind of quiet understanding you don't get from friends or therapists, only from someone who's lived inside the collapse. We adjusted the lighting, just enough to catch their faces, not enough to feel like a trap. The envelope of documents sat on the chair. I poured the wine, but didn't sip it. Tyler didn't either. "Do you think they'll come in smiling?" I asked. He stared at the front door. "They'll laugh until they see us." "Dear friend, what would you do if you were in my shoes? I bet you can't guess what's coming next. But before we go any further, drop a 5 in the comments if you're still with me, because what happens next might just leave you speechless." I checked the time. 5:54 p.m. We sat across from the entryway, like actors waiting for their cue. I could hear the ocean outside, soft and endless. This place used to feel like an escape. Now it felt like a stage. At 5:57, we heard tires crunching gravel. I didn't move. Tyler didn't blink. A car door shut, then another. Laughter, then a muffled voice. Nathan's, full of that easy charm that once fooled me too. The door opened. Claire stepped in first, bouquet of pale tulips in hand. She smiled, brief, relaxed, maybe even content. Then she saw us. She froze. The flowers slipped from her fingers. Nathan followed close behind, carrying a gift bag. It hit the floor with a soft thud, and a bottle of champagne rolled out, clinking gently against the wood before stopping at the base of the couch. Tyler stood first. "Welcome," he said, his voice calm. "We were just getting started." Claire's lips parted, but no words came. Nathan's eyes narrowed. "Emily, what is this?" I didn't rise. "Wine, 4 glasses. Thought we'd all enjoy it." Claire took a step back. "This isn't yours," Tyler said. "I believe it is, just not the way you meant it." He walked to the table and hit play on his phone. Claire's voice filled the room. "He doesn't even ask questions anymore. It's like I'm invisible in my own house. The only time I feel awake is when I'm with you." The recording ended. Nathan turned to me. "You were spying on me?" "I was confirming what I already knew," I said, "and what I now legally own." I pulled the envelope from the chair and dropped it onto the table. "Beach house. Your father left it to me. Thought I deserved something for showing up while the rest of you didn't." Nathan's mouth opened, then closed. Claire sat down, one hand on her chest. "I'm pregnant," she said suddenly, eyes locked on Tyler. The room stilled. Tyler took a breath. "Is it mine?" Claire nodded slowly. "I'm sure." Nathan turned, his voice sharp. "Wait, what?" Claire didn't look at him. "You're saying you're pregnant? With his child?" She nodded again. I stared at the tulip petals scattered on the floor. I wondered if she brought them to soften the blow or just to decorate the lie. Nathan ran a hand through his hair. This is insane." "No," I said, rising. "This is clarity. The kind you ignored. The kind I lived with." Claire began to cry. I looked at her. "You're not the first woman to fall into something and call it love, but that doesn't make it true." Nathan stepped toward me, eyes red. "Emily." I stopped him with a look. "No yelling, no excuses. We're just here to show you what it looks like when truth walks in." He didn't say another word. I picked up my coat, stepped around the tulips, and paused at the door. Nathan said behind me, "It's not what you think." I turned, calm and steady. "It never is," I said. "That's the problem." I didn't raise my voice. I just laid the papers on the table like I was placing down a folded sweater. That's the thing about silence. It can feel sharper than any scream when used right. The heater hummed behind us, throwing off a low warmth that couldn't quite soften the cold air between us. No one touched the wine. The glasses sat like props now, reminders of a moment that had taken on a life of its own. Claire opened her mouth first. I didn't mean... I shook my head slowly. Don't explain, not to me. Her voice broke. It was complicated. Complicated doesn't excuse cruelty, I said. And pretending it does? That's the cruelty. Tyler stood near the window, his arms crossed. He hadn't spoken since the pregnancy confession, but now he turned to Claire with a steady voice. You told me the roof loan was delayed, that we'd need another 2 months before the repairs could start. But then I found the transfer, $10,000 to a rehab center in Spokane. Recipient, Jackson Monroe. Claire's eyes widened. He's my brother. You never told me, Tyler said. Not once. Claire took a slow breath. I was trying to help him quietly. I didn't want to burden you. Helping someone isn't the problem, he replied. Hiding it is. I sat back in my chair, the envelope still in front of Nathan. He hadn't moved. Nathan, I said, my tone even, do you remember why we kept separate finances? He looked up, tired, defeated. You said it was better for taxes. That was the story, I said. The truth? You racked up $42,000 in gambling debt in 2015. Your parents bailed you out. I saw how easily you lied then, and how easily you could do it again. He looked down at the envelope. And yet, I continued, I still paid the mortgage on this cabin, while you were here with her, laughing, drinking, lying. I looked at Claire, whose shoulders had started to tremble. We're not rivals, I told her. We're reminders of what not to be. No one argued. I slid the divorce documents across the table, neat, signed, witnessed. I had them drawn up last month, I said. Just needed the final straw. You delivered. Nathan didn't reach for them. Emily, he began. No, I said. This isn't a conversation. This is closure. You don't get to negotiate it. He leaned back, a shadow passing over his face. I never wanted to lose you. You didn't lose me, I said. You let go, long before you realized it. Outside, the wind pushed against the windows. A soft whistle wrapped around the cabin like a final warning. Tyler picked up his coat. I'll wait in the car, he said, giving Claire a long look that held both pain and history. She didn't follow him. I stood and looked one last time around the room. The cabin that once held our dreams now held our debris. I stepped toward the door. Nathan didn't stop me. Behind me, Claire whispered, I'm sorry. I paused, hand on the doorknob. Regret is a mirror, I said, but it only works if you're brave enough to look into it. And then I opened the door. Tyler was waiting outside, keys in hand, looking toward the dark road ahead. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. We walked side by side toward his car, our feet crunching on the gravel path. Behind us, the cabin lights glowed like a house in a snow globe, sealed off from whatever came next. And behind us, I heard nothing. No footsteps, just a door finally staying closed. Every morning, I open every window, even when the air is brisk, even when the fog rolls in heavy from the sea. I let the wind through each room, like an old friend I trust to clear the corners. Let in the breeze, let go of the past. The beach house is quiet this time of year. Spring has begun to bloom gently, small bursts of color in the garden, lavender sprigs pushing up through fresh soil, seagulls crying over the dunes like clockwork. I sleep in the room facing the ocean now. The first night I stayed here alone, I thought I'd be haunted, but the only ghosts were the ones I refused to carry. That night I didn't dream about Nathan. I dreamt of sunlight and lavender. The house has changed. Soft throws draped over the chairs, pale blue curtains, a kettle that whistles just a bit too loud. It's not a trophy. It's not revenge. It's a place I made mine. This morning, I checked my messages after watering the plants. Tyler had sent a photo, a tiny baby, pink-cheeked and wrapped in a crocheted blanket. "She's here," his message read. "Her name is Nora. We're doing okay, learning slowly." There was another message beneath it from a client, a woman named Dana, recently divorced, trying to navigate her first mortgage on a single income. "Thank you again for yesterday," it said. "You made me feel like I can actually do this." I poured my tea, jasmine and mint, and opened my laptop. At 10, I had a Zoom session with a new client in Georgia, a school counselor now adjusting to living on half the income and all the decisions. I don't work out of an office anymore. I don't wear heels. I help women like me, those who once gave everything for a life that didn't return the favor. I teach them how to separate emotion from accounts, how to read between the financial lines, how to hold the pen when signing a lease, not just nod from the passenger seat. That afternoon, I sat on the porch, feet tucked beneath me, and wrote a letter to myself. Not the woman I am now, but the version I used to be. The one who cried in the car with the radio turned up so no one would hear. The one who waited for apologies that never came. The one who thought love and loyalty were always the same thing. I folded the letter, slipped it into my journal, and closed the cover with care. I don't think much about Nathan anymore. I heard through a former colleague that he lost out on the promotion he'd been angling for. Something about a shift in team dynamics. Claire faded into quieter spaces, or so I assume. No more bouquets, no more late-night whispers behind locked phones. I don't wish them harm, but I also don't wish them back. Healing, I've found, isn't about forgiving the person who broke you. It's about releasing the version of yourself that let them hold the hammer. As the sun dipped low across the horizon, I stood by the kitchen window, fingers trailing the rim of a small clay pot. The lavender bloomed full this year, thicker, brighter, stronger, just like me. And as the wind moved gently through the room, lifting the edge of a recipe card and rustling the journal on the table, I understood something I hadn't before. This house isn't my prize, it's my proof that I didn't stay quiet when silence was expected. Some mornings, the waves still carry echoes of who I used to be, but the quiet in this house isn't empty, it's earned. It reminds me that peace isn't something you wait for. It's something you choose when the noise no longer deserves your attention. I've learned that loyalty without boundaries isn't love. It's self-abandonment. And sometimes walking away isn't the end of something beautiful. It's the beginning of something honest. If this story touched something in you, I invite you to share your thoughts, whether in silence or in words. Healing begins when we know we're not alone.